dike mberede ka eji ama dike. Mmiri ezola sachapụ ihe akọrọ n'ubi, anwụghachala chanwụcha akwụkwọ nri, mmiri na anwụ enwe mmekọ. Ọ bụrụ ihe dịka mmiri dịtụkwa ka anwụ ala wee gbaruo iruo, mana dike turugo. Never let go of who you are.
Ahambu Adobe Ezokoli, Abumonye, Anambra State. I'm really interested in learning about the language and culture that I come from, which is the Igbo language and culture. And so in today's conversation, I'm super excited to be talking with Amarachi Attamah, and she is a performance artist and a graduate student at Syracuse University. Amarachi, Dalundewa, thank you for speaking with me.
Thank you so much. The pleasure is mine. I'm happy to be here to talk and to mix it up with, some spice of Igbo language so that
yes, for sure.
You will get the energy, you will get the expression, and also, of course, also understand me when I talk about some things. So I ain't gonna so Igbo man.
Which means I'm going to be doing a lot of translating for this project. But yes, that's fine. That is so. Okay. So I wanted to start by sort of setting some context. Just before we started, I was giving a bit of background. I'm Igbo. I'm from Anambra State, and I'm Igbo. But I didn't really grow up speaking Igbo. My parents spoke Igbo to each other in our home. I think part of it was that we grew up in the northern Nigeria. We are surrounded by families from all across Nigeria. And so we had neighbors that were Yoruba, neighbors that were Hausa, neighbors that were from Cross River, like from Benue, different places. And also my parents worked at the university, at Ahmadu Bello University. So they always spoke English to us growing up. I don't remember really them speaking Igbo to me, but they always spoke Igbo to each other. So in a way, I grew up understanding my language, but not really speaking it. And I remember really I remember going home for Christmas and Easter's, and this thing where people would be like, hey, Umu Prof, people don't speak Igbo. Like it was always a very, uneasy feeling once we went home, because then we were forced to sort of speak Igbo to our grandparents, because they didn't really speak English that much. And I just remember it's being super uneasy for me. Eventually, when I moved back to Nigeria in 2010, after maybe around 16 years away, I forced myself to start speaking Igbo to people around me without, I was like, no, I need to start speaking Igbo. And thankfully, I had a friend who did not laugh when I spoke Igbo back to her, and she would speak Igbo back to me. And eventually, small, I started to regain fluency. So this conversation for me really is to explore my language, but also to speak to people who, like you, who are very versed, who are not just fluent, are professional, in the language and in the space. You're a performance artist. You use Igbo you navigate the language so well. I've seen some of your performances and I'm just super incredibly impressed. So I want to talk to you about your experiences growing up as someone who speaks Igbo, and where you see this language and this culture going. I want to start by asking you to share a little bit about your background in terms of where did you grow up? What were some of the lingering memories that you have, of your childhood?
Okay, thank you again for having me. I'm really excited talking about Igbo language and all of it. And that's partly because, being an artist who used the language and being a culture promoter, language speaking advocate, and all that comes with it. At some point, people would say maybe because she doesn't know how to speak English, or maybe she doesn't speak English, and all those things.
Right.
So some people didn't even believe I ever attended school until I started doing my master's. Like I'm doing my second master's now, and they're like,
amazing.
Second master's? How? When did she even go to school? because I used to do it so much more that I would make my hair in the
Mm,
old-fashioned way and all that. So growing up for me, I have a little bit similar background with you, being that I was born in Bauchi State.
mm,
So we grew up in the north speaking Hausa. I still speak Hausa.
fantastic.
But the only difference is that our parents at home spoke our language to us. Actually, they spoke our
Like a native
indigenous
dialect.
dialect,
Yeah.
the Nsoka dialect. That was what we spoke growing up. So, in as much as we spoke Hausa, we played with children all around
Mm-hmm.
from Hausa. At some point, we left Bauchi, we moved to Benue, and we lived in a place where we had Tiv and Idoma and Igala, but we still had some mix of Hausa. And because we spoke Hausa, we became very close to Hausa children, and we kept speaking the language. But then at home, there was no English. So amongst us, the kids, we used to speak Pidgin English.
Oh wow, that's
Yeah,
amazing.
we mostly, if we want to just talk on as
Mm,
kids, we use speaking English, but with our parents, and the official family language is our own core dialect. So that helped me a lot, because I don't know if I would have been able to speak the language without that culture in the family, that speaking of the language in the family, because that is like the major background. So, but I also do believe that people learn as adults, because I see people travel all over the world, for instance, to countries like Germany, where they say you have to learn the language before you do a course, and within
yep.
6 months, somebody speaking the language like phew. So I
Right.
believe that language is
Immerse
something everybody
themselves.
can learn, even though when it is your language, your own mother tongue, it seems like it's a bit hard to learn it as adulthood, because you are just trying to learn it, not necessarily because you are learning it as a course, or you want to learn it as you set a target. Just like if you want to learn French now, you set a target and you really want to
Mm,
learn French. But with the language, with your indigenous language, you are learning it because maybe because my language, I just want to learn it. So it becomes, the balance is not really there. So growing up in Bauchi, and then to Benue, and then to Abuja, and then back to Enugu, it has just been, floating, going from one place to another. But funny enough, all the places I have grown up until I was sometime in my senior secondary education was Hausa environments. So we kept speaking Hausa, and and all that. So, but now I now came back to the east, and that was where I saw a lot of kids not speaking their language. I didn't understand that,
wow,
because
in the East.
yes, I came back when I was to start my JSS 3. That is the
Yeah.
SS 1.
Secondary
That is
school,
the
yeah.
senior secondary. Because I finished my junior secondary in Abuja. So when we came back, and I finished my senior secondary in Onsoka, of course we do speak the language in Onsoka, and then moving to Enugu, where I was now to stay a little bit before I start the university, I saw a lot of kids not speaking the language. I didn't understand it, because growing up in the north, I never saw children who never spoke Hausa, like Hausa kids who never spoke Hausa. So it
Right.
was a bit strange that I am now in the east, and a lot of kids that are in the east are not speaking the language. Now it's different from somebody who say, okay, I was born in the north, or I was born abroad. You can a little bit understand because they are not in the environment. But when you meet children who are born in the villages and not speaking the language, it is the strangest thing I've ever seen. Like when I talk about, people who say it's not that serious, don't see it that way, but I see it as too serious, that a child born in their own community in the village will not speak their language. I don't understand it. I see that as um, real failure, by that community, so that
So
helped me,
what
my
if
background
if I
helped me.
may interrupt, what do you remember, what were some of the reasons that you heard or you were given why kids were not speaking their language?
Yeah, so I have had this advocacy spirit from childhood. So I tried to, go to schools, talk to people first, and I like looking at the root of, problems. I started going to schools, and I started hearing things like it is optional. The Igbo language is optional. I was like, okay, but why is it optional? So I heard that a lot of students don't like attending the class. Their parents are not really keen on their children. They rather their children learn French or join Chinese or those kind of classes, but
The
not
languages. Yeah.
not Igbo language. Then I asked the students themselves, and a lot of them would say, "What do we use it for?" The parents say, "We don't use it for anything." And again, all the competitions all over the world is done with English, for English or mathematics or all those. Nothing is done on Igbo language, which was what led me to start an organization just for the kids to express themselves. So, which became the biggest cultural festival for young
Wow.
people in the East, which is Oja Cultural Festival. It was done annually until Corona Wahala came.
Right. So let me
So,
just sorry to interrupt again. So it looks like from what you said about their reasons, so it's an issue of placing value on a language that parents and students
it's
felt
value.
like they can leverage in the future for other
Yeah,
things. Like if I take French, I can use it, if I leave the country, I can use it to get to jobs.
exactly.
And then English, like you said, is used throughout for competitions. When you were growing up in your own home, did you get that sense of um which languages are valued differently in terms of, was there a weight, if you and you said you spoke Hausa because you live in the north, but at home you spoke your dialect. What was the emotion linked to Igbo for you growing up, in your home? How did your parents instill, or what was their view or their perception of the Igbo language in terms of the value of it?
So I think it's for my family, it was just natural. There was nothing else I knew growing up as a
Mm,
child.
mm,
So there was never a conflict of which of the languages are we going to speak at home.
right.
So the question of value wasn't even presenting itself in my family because the only thing we spoke, I am not the first child, I am not even the second, I'm not even the third.
Wow.
So growing up as a child, you sprout up into this family and you look at everybody's faces and they're all talking in one language like that. You
Yeah.
begin to pick those words and you begin to speak the language. So there was never a question of, okay, when you come home speak Hausa, or when you come home, we already conditioned that once you enter the house, you start speaking the language. There is nothing else to speak. You don't speak English to my mother or my father. So it's the
And
value
it
because again,
um was English valued at all in terms of when you go to school, you learn English? Like, was there any value placed on languages like English or French, just like you said you found in schools in the
yes.
East?
So in my family, we saw English is a language for school.
So it was an education, an
Yeah, English is a
education
language for
language.
for school, for out. Of course, amongst the kids, we
Right.
do assignments. We talk, like I said, we even spoke pidgin English very well at amongst the kids. Our parents do not stop us from speaking. But my
Okay.
mother or my father will not come and say, come. No, they
Mm,
wouldn't say that. We never heard them say, come, you know. They will speak to you, Bia. So you know the language.
couldn't
So
respond that
so
way.
even at home as kids, because I came from a family with large number of children, even as we mix the languages in the family, I don't know, for some reason, because of, like you said, the inherent value placed on it just balances itself. You don't need to separate, okay, this is where to do what. Because I do know that as kids, we spoke a lot of English in the house, we spoke Pidgin English, we spoke Hausa language, we spoke everything. Even up till now, my mom can sometimes want to speak to you, maybe in the midst of people, and she just wants just you and her to understand. She can switch to Hausa, and then you
Interesting.
just tell you what she wants to tell you in Hausa because she knows you understand
Yes.
it. So
Yeah.
in the East, but that of the East, when I I started going to parents because I went to parents. I had this thing. It was just worrying me. And then a lot of parents were like, "Can you hear Jibweme?" You just hear that thing, Jibweme, biko biko. And then there was this question of, apart from the value, there was a question of very low self-esteem, which came from, I don't know whether I would say colonialism, or I don't know whether I would say the post-colonial, the post-war trauma, the Biafran war, because because I started researching more. So after the Biafra war, a lot of parents left Igbo land for other places.
Right.
Looking for green pastures and all that. So in order to survive in other places, they
Move
took their
themselves
language,
away.
they took the language away. So they gave their children all the English names. They took everything, the language away. They wouldn't even want you to have accent, what they called accent. Don't even try to have it. So even up till now, it has gotten so worse that in you see more of Igbo people, more of Igbo parents living like in Abuja or Lagos, inviting teachers to teach their children English, British and American accent, not the English now, but
Oh,
the accent. Yes, you
are
hear
you
something like
serious?
that. Yes, in Abuja now
Wow.
we have parents who are teaching their children English and British and American accent, not the language, not English language, but the accent. They want their children to be in Nigeria and sound like an Americana. You know,
Amazing. I had
so
never heard about this before.
it's really really it has gone way beyond
Interesting.
just placing value on the language, because now I see it as a gross low self-esteem, where you do not even know what you don't even have value anything that concerns you. And again, then came religion, extreme religious practices being holier than the Pope, where people started seeing anything that have to do with their language and culture as evil, including their names. And so you see people who are answering Ngozi will change it to blessing. Somebody who is answering Ezema, like my place, which is Ezema, they change it to Ezema so that it will be King of Beauty. I don't know what that's. So they just keep changing things because you hear things like generational curses, generational, if you are carrying generational curses in the Pentecostal churches. So they began to
So
infuse
it's
this
like
thing.
to distance themselves from names that
Exactly.
they
So you distance
associated
from
were
yourself
related
from
to
your
like
culture.
he and gods and like deities and stuff like that.
Exactly.
Interesting.
So your name, your language, your cultural practices, your dressing. You get people who are living in the East, in the sunny Nigeria, dressing tougher than people in America because they just want to look foreign. Because the more foreign you look or the more foreign you act, the more closer you are to heaven. So you are valued more if you are abroad. Of course, you already know if you are abroad, you are seen like, oh, well, you are if in the
You're
name
right.
so it's a whole lot. It's that value. It's the post-colonial problem. Is the post-war trauma.
Mm,
Then is the low self-esteem, the societal low self-esteem that have been placed in everything Africa, in everything indigenous to a particular people. So people just want to be English. And how best are you English than listening to your children just speak those quaint, sparkling English language? Even if the
interesting.
tenses and the grammar is not okay, because all of us this is not our language now. We are still trying to handle it well.
Yeah,
But you
yeah.
see children who are, when they speak, oh, you'll be like, oh, what is going on here? So, but that same child will be answering Okechukwu, but would not know the meaning of Okechukwu. They don't even know the meaning
Mm,
of their own names. And then you see children in Igbo land who their parents just want them to answer names like Stone, Chelsea, all those, and all those things. They don't
precise names.
want
Yeah.
to have anything to do with the language. So it's just,
Interesting.
but we started, there was this massive reawakening and awareness that started a few years ago, which I was one of the people who spearheaded it.
Is this
We
in the East?
Yeah,
In
in the
Enugu
East,
State?
using social media, we
Oh
started.
wow.
When I started Oja, we started going from school to school, churches, families, different places, preaching the gospel of awakening our language and culture, our dances, our folk songs. Because when you look at it, Igbo people are, we were oral people. People
Right.
who
We have
pass
a rich
their
oral culture.
history
Yeah.
and everything through oral rendition. And see, you cannot really know the nitty-gritty of Igbo language and your culture if you don't understand the language very well. Why? Understanding the language, now I'm not saying speaking, I'm talking about understanding the language. Because
Mm,
you look at something like Proverbs, for instance, which is like the Bible of Igbo people. In Proverbs, a lot of things are hidden. Then you look at our akụkọ ifo, which is where a lot of our histories are hidden, and our ways of life, and our Igbo cosmology and way, philosophies and all that. So if you disconnect yourself from these things, which of course are all embedded in the language, you begin to disconnect yourself from knowing a lot about your people. It becomes so difficult to know about your people, right?
Wandezi omume na mu wetara okwu mgbamume ma gwa ndị ajọ mmụọ mmiri ọnụ bụ ikuku ọjọọ n'ime ha na mu wetara ikpe. Ọkwa ndị be anyị siri na ekwughị ekwu mere ọnụ anụ ha anụ mere ntị. Ndị be anyị siri na asọgide eze anya ekwuru nkata n'ihu gwa ya okwu mmiri dọrọ n'eju dọrọ nwa nkịta.
At the beginning, you said that people felt that you were so into Igbo that you didn't understand English or hadn't gone to school. And then you also said, you spoke Igbo at home and then English was for school. So did you have problems learning English since you hadn't been learning English at home? When you went to school to learn English, did you find that was it a problem? Was it difficult at all?
No, I didn't have any problem. In fact, I was one of the pupils who were coming first in the class all the time. All the time. And like I said, just because I grew up from that place where we don't have separation, like this language is for this. Nobody ever said that. It was just the way it was.
The way it was,
so,
right.
You can see the kids, we can be in one corner speaking English, doing assignment, doing all those. My parents will not stop us, of course. But we know our language. We just speak the language. It's just natural. So there is this mentality that started a few years ago by new generational parents. I say new generational parents because there is only the new generation parents that think a lot. They bring up a lot of theories that I don't understand where it comes from. The issue of if the speak now growing in another place is a different thing because that's
like outside Nigeria, outside
Alibo is a different thing. But being in Alibo, being in like Nsukka and not speaking Nsukka language, I see that as foolishness from the parents. Because now they say things like, if the child speak Igbo, the child will not learn English. Who said that? You. And they are telling you with English, which means they can actually speak English and Igbo. It's just like the way I am. I speak English, I speak Igbo. Then I will now give birth to a child and I will now say, if my child speak Igbo, the child will not learn English. How? When I learned it. So because children can learn 5 languages and they're comfortable with it, especially when they are still kids. Now, when they start growing and become teenagers and become adults, it becomes harder, which is why the best time to imbibe that thing in them, that's don't bring this separation, because the separation comes when you start growing up. That is when you know. Because if you are a kid, you don't know. You're just speaking what being in America now. I see kids that are Indians and Chinese, and they're just speaking their language. So there is no separation. So, but when you see them in school, they try to also communicate in English language. So I never had issue because, of course, English language is the official language in Nigeria. And so which means that is the language.
Yeah, one of them with the other.
Yes,
it's official like business language. Yes.
Yes, that is the core language in Nigeria. Then the 3 recognized national language becomes Igbo, Hausa, Yoruba. But the official language where they use in everything is English. Right. So we have our constitution written in English. We have our media programs. We have our news. We have every other thing in English language. So you can't do it. You just hear English. So the question of whether children will learn English and Igbo is just a new theory that nobody has been able to, really back it up with
evidence. Yeah,
because there is no evidence to that. Speak to your children; they will learn. Especially now that we are even in what we call, in quotes, modern times, where from the day you give birth to the child is already listening to English, because the people coming to look at the child, the phone calls, the television, everything is English. So it becomes even more difficult for you to catch the child with the indigenous language, which is why the parents should start from when the child is still in the womb to start speaking the language. Because when the child is out from the hospital, that moment, a lot of English language will fill the air. Unlike in the past, where, like when I was born, I'm not sure that a lot of people will come in and start speaking English. No. But now, I visit hospitals because I did this research, even though nobody sent me for the research. I was just doing different. I was going to the hospital, I was going to schools, let me see what is going on in churches. Everybody is speaking English. Just like you said, you see parents speaking, a couple speaking to themselves in their language. And once they turn to the child, they're like, Bia Junior, go and get me this, go and bring me this, go and bring me that. And they turn to the husband or the wife and they when I work in a way, you know. So I begin to ask, this is like programmed now. I'm seeing what is going on.
Yeah.
So the parents just naturally switch to Igbo language or the indigenous language when they are speaking to themselves as the couple. Once they switch to the child, it naturally again switch to that English.
Yeah, and I don't know that they're intentional. I think it's something that happens because, like you said, there's a desire from the parents that their children are what is perceived as well-educated, knowledgeable, and learned, right? And that means speaking English, but not just speaking English, but speaking English well. And also, it also depends, I guess, on the parents' own education and experiences with language, and whether they've seen language as a barrier to elevation in work and, in their own experiences growing up. And it was interesting. I find it interesting when you talked about, our constitution is in English. Most of this, like you said, business language is in English, even though then we still now have these 3 other official languages. And I wanted to get your insights into if we Igbos and other languages, if we grow up actively being able to access our constitution in our language, access, spheres of politics and governance and society, those spheres that are considered, learned, law, medicine, those areas, being able to learn and study them in our languages. Do you think that this will have an impact on the way people view and value Igbo?
Yes, it will be, because usage of language again. For instance, Amarachi is doing Igbo. Amarachi is the Igbo girl. Amarachi is now going to UK, going to America, going to that. Amarachi is now performing in Ndocha. Hey, Ndocha. Amarachi is now everywhere. So people tend to listen more. It wasn't like that when I started. You hear things like what is all this? Why is she? How can somebody go to university and decide to be useless to the family?
Because you're studying Igbo or languages, right?
Because I didn't even study the language, but I was so engrossed in the language. I was doing everything in Igbo language. So you see, Igbo people organize a festival for Igbo people, only Igbo people, or an event they will call Igbo people gathering, only Igbo people, and they'll be speaking English only. And they'll be complaining in the same event that we need to make our children to speak Igbo language with English language. It was just something I wouldn't understand. So if the usage of the language is very key, if it's tied to everyday it's tied to things, even if it is just in the family. For instance, if I know that if I go to my father and say, Dad, I need this, my father will look at me like, is this one okay? And I know that my father would listen more if Nnam biko achọrọ m ego ụgwọ akwụkwọ. Because language has a way of melting your heart. It has a way of just making you calm down. If I know that my father would pay attention when I speak that language, then I would want to use it. But when you go to your father and speak your language, and your father is like, what did you say? And you speak exactly. So you see, you begin to hide that language, right? If you walk to your brother or your sister or somebody that understand the language, and you want to hey, one more, you want to communicate, and the person is like, hey, excuse me. There is this
It creates that barrier. And
So
it's funny what you're saying really
you begin to keep the language. So
yeah.
usage, like anybody in my faculty now know that I'm Igbo person. Even if they've never heard anything about Igbo, they know now. Even I'm sure some of my lecturers are like, oh my God, we can't. And you know what? The more I use this, the more I see that every theory that people come up with in order not to hide the language away are just lies. Because I tell you, when I perform in Igbo language, I even have more of foreigners coming to me and say, oh my goodness, that was so good. They don't even hear what I say, but I love it. They just love it, right? Because it's something different. It's you, it's your originality, right?
Ikwikwi gwara ụmụ nnụnụ na okwu izizi ha apụghị n'okwu. Onye gburu dibịa na-agwọrọ ya ọgwụ, ndị na-akọ ya nshi ya agwụla ka m jụọ. Onye ma onwe ya oke busu akpụrụ ya. Ọ bụ agha.
So you've also highlighted some of the concerns that you have around parents not speaking Igbo to their kids, especially in the East, which is like the central, Igbo area, basically.
Yeah.
Do you think that the Igbo culture can survive or will survive if the Igbo language changes or if the Igbo language is lost? What when you think about what do you think?
It's actually being affected in so many ways right now. A lot of the things people call culture now have nothing to do with the culture.
Interesting.
At all. So you see elders propagating things that are not our culture at all. Because it's either they are learning from Nollywood films, they are learning their culture from Nollywood films, or they are trying to infuse some of the religious and foreign beliefs into the culture and call it the Igbo culture. Now, for instance, let me use one that stands out very well that I keep arguing. The English people taught us the placing of women as second-class citizens, not the Igbo culture.
Right, I remember that. Yeah, I've heard this actually.
But whenever you said it, they tell you, no, in America, the law protects the women. Yeah, the law protects the women now. But have you looked at 100, 200 years ago? Have you looked at the history? How they came here? Have you looked at the countries that really had some of the most outstanding cases about gender disparities? Now, Igbo people believed we had gender roles, don't get me wrong, because there is this respect for the biological existence of a man and a woman, right? So there is gender roles. There is this thing of a woman not climbing Okonko. And I'll tell them that is not my destiny to be climbing Okonko. Because when a woman climbs Okonko, she exposes her private parts. Now, there is gender roles. But the Igbo culture and deities believe in Ihenine de Abo, which is the concept of
everything is
duality. But now when you speak, it even elders will tell you, no, there's nothing like that. There is this outstanding low self-esteem by the men right now, that they are always thinking that the woman doing it is against our culture. It's against our... No, it's not against your culture. Now I educate a lot of them. Before I would say, oh, let me respect my elders and keep quiet. Now I try to educate them that I will say, this is not your culture, right? So it's affecting the culture because a lot of things are being lost. Ilu Igbo is getting lost totally. You cannot...
By Ilu Igbo means the proverbs. Igbo proverbs. Igbo proverbs, yes.
Igbo proverbs. And in Ilu Igbo, we have like some of the ancient belief systems. So that if you don't... You see these animal stories that you hear, they use it to...
yeah.
If you know Ilu Igbo, you will see a whole... Which is the woodpecker does not peck the wood with its strength, right? So there is a whole lot of Ilu Igbo done with mbe and everything. You will see them in Ilu Igbo, which is one. So if the language is lost, Ilu Igbo is lost. And Ilu Igbo, if you ask me, is the Bible, if I can use that word, of the Igbo people. That is where everything, every problem, every issue you want to tackle in Igbo culture is in Ilu Igbo. A lot of elders today do not even know Ilu Igbo anymore because you ask them to warji, to
I was going to say that
perform, yes,
Abiwaji
perform the
said like,
consecration of kola nut, and they
and it's
start
only done in
speaking
Igbo.
uh, in Jesus' name, and they talk back, and they cut it. That's it. Iwoji is consecration, is like invocation,
Mm.
right? It's a cultural practice as well as prayer. So that is where you hear some of the names of the deities, the belief system, the core concept of the Igbo people when they do, because that is one divine practice, like what the Catholics do, the Holy Communion.
The consecration, yes, the communion.
But today you see a lot of elders Amaha Awoji, right?
So then do you, sorry.
Ilu Igbo is lost. Akụkọ ifo, which you know, that is where the folk stories, the folk tales, where they tell the history and all that. So when the Akụkọ ifo language is lost, Akụkọ ifo is lost, which means a huge chunk of our history is lost.
Like our oral retelling of
Exactly.
folklore
Except the few things that were taken during colonialism, the pictures and all that were made into books and people just see them and all those things.
I remember my grandfather used to tell a lot of stories.
Exactly.
I remember that like storytelling was something that, and I remember even now, like even if I wanted to, I will sit down and ask my dad, I'm like, I need to ask you about, our history, our culture. And I realized as I grew up that there's so many things that we don't know about our culture and our history. And of course, our parents are, they're growing older and they're recipients and custodians, of this history. And I started thinking, if we don't begin to record this and talk to them now, a lot of, like I said, knowledge and memory and history, is lost. Then what do we hand over to the next generation?
So it's happening now because the Igbo people are just oral people that transferred things from generation to generation using their language. When it is lost, the folk songs, the proverbs, the folk stories, and a whole lot of the codes of conduct, right? The belief system, all these are embedded in the language. So when the language is lost, it's just like an existing people who say we are Igbo, and then the only time you know that they are Igbo is during the festivals that we do. And then everybody will go and sew Ishago, and then in the Igbo, that's it.
A fun part of our culture.
Ọgụ onwe, echiche ọjọọ, ọgụ ikpe nkwụmọtọ, ọgụ agụụ, ọgụ ndụ ka anyị dịrị, ọgụ agaghị eri anyị, gwa ha na anyị ga-adị.
In terms of, you've done a lot of advocacy on this. You're very versed in what is going on in this sphere. Where do you see hope? Where do you see success? Where can we hang on to that? So maybe something is happening and something might change in the future.
Rebuilding the value. There is this beautiful wind of reawakening happening. People are beginning to value it more. Now there is that effort. And I love when Chimamanda always said, my child, speak Igbo language, because I speak Igbo language to my child. So we want those voices. I love when the governor of the state will come out and say, we want to bring back Akwete, and speaking of our language and this. I love it because that is now the usage we're talking about. So the awakening started by awakening our value system, the value for self, the value for your heritage, the value for the language. It is happening, I will tell you. I am happy it is happening. We've been using social media. I have been doing a lot of exercises. In fact, I just posted one yesterday for Igbo folk story. So we encourage people to go and ask questions. And then they tell these stories or this proverb and they win money. So I've been doing it for so many years now. So we recognize that colonialism, the war, and modernity and globalization and all that, it's affecting us. So it's only those few voices reawakening that value system, because once there is value, then half of the problem is solved. So that value, there is reawakening. Parents are listening, people are listening, people are giving their children only Igbo names now. People are like, everybody's advocating, people are people are now seeing the mistakes. Now it's no longer Amarachi or one or two persons calling out. When people do something, you see many people calling out now, no, 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 this is not how we do it. And then there is this re-education about what the culture is, and that leads to some of us who are privileged to be going to school at the same time propagating the culture. We are now researching more into our culture, so we know what is good and what is not, what is our culture and what is not, what was just adopted. So there is this reawakening of the cultural practices, of the proverbs and folklore, using the media, using the social media, using tech, using all those. And you see it is coming around. People are beginning to, come up. People are buying Igbo books now. People are downloading the Igbo applications and creating Igbo applications, which is there on the App Store. So that value is what we want to attack more. And once that is done, then we are halfway done.
Thank you so much. I have one more question. It's been such an incredible conversation and so many takeaways. I have to go back and listen to this again, and really, really insightful takeaways. So say I'm a parent, my child has grown up not really speaking Igbo. I've realized that it's important. What would you say to those parents who are struggling? Or for instance, say I'm married to a person who is not Igbo, and because of that, we don't even speak our languages to each other, much less to our children.
Exactly.
What would you say to parents like that, like who are interested and possibly really just want to, or who realizes it's late and want to start somewhere?
Yes, so I always say, people have this proverb that say, "Monye jiteta bototo ya." So whenever a person wakes up, is the person's morning. So you might wake up at 4 a.m. and I wake up at 10 a.m. That is my own morning. If I wake up at 12 noon, that is my own morning. So there is no time that is late. I don't believe in anything late, right? Because there is always, as long as there is life and you are breathing, there is an opportunity to correct something that you have done yesterday that you didn't really do well. So reevaluation. And as soon as you come to that stage where now you are awake, you now value, you now want to, you just start learning, you help. That's why, again, when you go to social media, when people are insulting or accusing or using harsh words on those who don't speak, I try to tone it down. You don't because if my parents are not speaking to me and I didn't speak, you can't come and be blaming me. What will I do? What am I supposed to do? Right? So, but there is the effort. When you realize, don't just sit there. It is now time to download apps, play Igbo music at home, watch Igbo movies, read Igbo books. But even if you don't know how to read, just because Igbo language is a tonal language, it is pronounced as it is written, right? Download those apps, start making effort, picking the words, employ a language teacher. It doesn't matter, right? Just start one, pick the words. Before you know it, visit home. There is always a way to do it. There was a time I used to create family programs, family things for families, to help their children learn. So I just say, make it fun. Don't make it like a subject in school. It's not a subject in school, right? You can say that today we are learning how to say beer, and everybody is using it. So you can make it a game. If you say come instead of beer, you lose out. You don't get something. So I might bring $1 and keep it. Whoever do not mix in English language today will get this $1. You see children making effort. Now you are making them to put more effort in it. It doesn't matter if they don't start speaking it fluently, but language, how do you speak language? You start picking words. That's why we have things like Duolingo apps where you learn. I am learning French now. I don't even know whether I'm doing it well, but I'm teaching myself. Yes.
I'm learning French too as well, actually, on Duolingo.
My sister, I have not been so, I have not been regular with it, but at least you see that when you learn one word, you start making sentences, right? That is how language is learned. So just help the children, or help even as an adult. If the parents, you are no longer in your parents' house, start making efforts, right? just start making the same way you learn mathematics or you learn computer or you learn any other thing.
Right.
Start learning it, and before you know it, my dear, you start making sentences. You say, hey, did I just do that? Oh my goodness, did I just do that? Right? So you do it, and you see yourself like I'm speaking the language. Like you're
Right.
growing day by day by day by day. If your kids are still small, start making the family that place, that safe place where they can speak and make fun and play with the language. As an adult, start doing the same thing. If you think you are so busy you can't even try it, today there are people even teaching on Zoom and all those things. Lucky you, people are now teaching on Zoom, right? So you can actually pay for some of these things, engage. If I want to learn Yoruba, for instance, or learn Hausa, I go to social media, start looking for pages that are doing the same thing, putting out content in those things, so that I can start picking things and enjoy, right? So there was a time in Nigeria, Oluwa is involved, was trendy, and people knew the meaning of Oluwa. It just became easy to learn the meaning of Oluwa. Now there's another one. People say Omo. It's an exclamation, but then everybody is using it. Omo. Hey, like Omo Nka Adekwe. So it's just that effort, and as you continue to make effort, it will pay off. It will start getting together, and before long you see yourself start making sentences.
So to say, Amarachi, emailer, Daluso.
Hello,
Thank you.
Mayoma.
Thank you so much for your time, for speaking with me today. It's been an incredible conversation. I learned so much and so many things that I was interested in understanding about how people see language and culture and the impact of it. You really just hit it on the head. Super excited about this project. Thank you again. How can people find you online on social media? How can people reach you if they are
Yeah,
interested
I
in
made it
learning more
easy.
about your work?
Amarachi Attamah is everywhere. Amarachi Attamah on YouTube. You will find me Wadiorama TV too. But I also created another YouTube, Amarachi Attamah. Amarachi Attamah on Twitter. Amarachi Attamah on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn. I just made it easy so that people will just see me anywhere. So
And
I
your
went.
performances can be seen on your
My
YouTube.
performances can be seen on my social media networks and YouTube, and or even Google. Just type Amarachi Attamah, it will link you to one of my social media pages or so. And then
Fantastic.
if you just contact me there, we get talking. I try to try to check the inbox of these social media platforms once in a while.
You're doing
So
well. You're
yeah,
really
we
doing
are
well.
there. We are just trying to do our best. We don't know it all, but just progressing, and it's been fulfilling. And I am happy when I see a parent or a child. I'm like, you made me start speaking English. Now you are making me to love Igbo. Now you are making me to start speaking. And you just smile. It just make you like, what? Even if I want to stop, nah, like I can't afford to disappoint these people. So it's been a learning process myself, because the more I speak, the more I go into it, the more I learn and research into it. And I am very happy and grateful that I have the opportunity to do all this.
I'm incredibly grateful that I had the opportunity to speak with you today. Yeah, thank you so so much, and best of luck in your studies. I know you do
Thank you.
incredible things. I can't wait to see the things that you do.
Thank you. Thank you so, so
Thank you so much.
much.
Thank
I bring you tales from the full moon. Akụkọ Mbegbo, memories of ancient Surugede, maps of Uli, sounds of our history, morning from the intercourse of Ekwe and Udu and Ogene.